What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets presented by So Rare, live here on Game Plus Network, also live on our FTN Network YouTube page. Chris Meaney here with you, officially back. Yesterday was a live show as well, but it was a different show. We did another best ball draft. You've been hanging out with us here on Game Plus Network over the past couple of weeks. We've done a lot of best ball drafts. And you know what? I'll be honest with you guys. The drafting is just going to continue to happen on this show. I'm going to ride solo with you today. I want to go over the flex draft, one of them from, New York, live in New York at the Perfect Pint. A fantastic weekend. I want to give Jake Ciely a shout out off the hop. I mean, he's been doing this for 12 years now. A lot of great people in New York. We were able to meet some people, old relationships rekindled kind of deal too. Our guy George was there in New York. We had a great time. We did the show, the FNT. I almost went back in the day, and those at Anthem Sports Entertainment in the Game Plus Network studios are well aware that I was just about to say FNTSY. It's the FTN Fantasy Show on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio Channel 87. We won't actually be with you this Saturday, but we will be with you. Lauren will be back with Jake and myself next Saturday, so look for that. But it was great. The draft took place. There it is, every Saturday, 9 a.m. Eastern, Channel 87, the FTN Fantasy Show. So we'll regroup and we'll be back together in a couple of weeks. But it was awesome to get together. And there's some faces, you know in the industry you've had on this show, but it doesn't really count. You have never really met them before, but able to meet some people. And the FTN crew, finally see George and Randall. Our old buddy Tino was there as well. Congratulations. Wasn't gonna bring that up, but I did leave engaged from New York. So it was an awesome weekend in more ways than one. George was taking pictures of me in Times Square in the DeLorean. Like, that was cool. That's high on my list right there with the engagement, George, not going to lie. But a great time. And we're going to go over the draft with you guys in a little bit, talk about my team. We broke down Eric Young's team at Set Bet Spike. We already touched on the draft just a little bit this morning on Set Bet Spike. Also comes your way on Game Plus Network, as well as All in Football. We're still together, Jake Ciely and Lauren Carpenter. LC, stepmom Lauren, we got together yesterday and we rolled through both drafts because there was a super flex draft as well. Jake Ciely runs that, wasn't in it, but our guy Jeff Ratcliffe was, and he had a heck of a draft, and Mike Randall was in it as well, and we broke down that draft. You can go back and listen on Sirius XM on the app if you are interested in that. But again, I just want to shout out Jake. I want to shout out the Perfect Pint and Sirius XM. All the producers were fantastic with us doing the live show on location. It was a lot of fun, man. And, just to kind of chop it up with, Aaron, Mr. Adam Ronis, the King, Scott Angle. Like, those are two guys that I've worked with a long time ago, again, at FNTSY. And, I've met those guys before, but it's always nice to kind of soak up some info and just talk some football with those guys. So we're going to go over the flex draft in just a little bit. Riding solo here with you today. Tomorrow we have not one, but two guests lined up. A lot of times I'm riding solo and maybe the show's not as great, but tomorrow I think the show will be solid because we have our guy Aaron Schatz who's going to join us here. Thank you. I was just going to bring that up. George hanging out. FTN Football Almanac is officially live over at FTN. Oh my goodness. Give me some bats here while you're at it. FTNfantasy.com. FTN Fantasy. Where do you work? FTNfantasy.com. That's where I work. Mean Streets live here. Man, I read it, the Almanac, and you can see some of the quotes here. It really is fantastic. We had Aaron on a couple weeks ago on the Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio Show. And also we saw Aaron on Good Morning Football this week. That was super cool to see. And they rolled the clip of him talking up the Birds. He loved the Eagles. And he talked a little bit about I guess he did give a Super Bowl prediction of the two squads, but he did say this time last year he thought the Eagles would be in the Super Bowl, and he nailed that. Go back and watch if you want, but we're going to have him on the show tomorrow. So I have a couple questions for him. Of course, he's the creator of Football Outsiders, DVOA, like a lot of cool metrics, a lot of great statistics, and the cover looks fantastic, George, and it is really, really good, and the hard copy is available if you want that as well. Deesh, back from a long wedding weekend. Saw the news on Jake's show. Congrats, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I didn't get much sleep over the weekend. I'm still kind of sluggish here, but we'll roll through. We'll roll through here today. Bear with me here, guys. But Aaron tomorrow. So if you guys have any questions for him, like now's the time to get in. We're going to be live at 12 Eastern. We're going to have Aaron on. I want to talk about a couple things like who like, and again, he gave the Bills and the Niners. That's a little bit of a sneak peek on his appearance over at Game Plus at Good Morning Football and NFL Network. But I want to talk to him about a couple other things, like maybe some teams that he thought would grade well and they're not, and vice versa. Like we always talk about the good teams, like the surprise good teams. What about the surprise like awful teams? You know what I mean? Like, is Miami that good? Is Miami going to be that good? Are we concerned about Tua? And now Jalen Ramsey's gone from the secondary. Like he's not going to be with the team for quite some time. Like I really liked that addition. I really liked the look of the secondary as well. We're just going to continue to roll on here, George. Appreciate you. But so we'll talk to Aaron about that. And we also have Jay Morrison, who covers the Bengals for Pro Football Network. And he's a former colleague of mine, Jay. Jay's fantastic. He just, so for Pro Football Network, he's covering the Bengals. He's been covering the Bengals for years. And I used to work with him at The Athletic. And I used to produce a podcast with him and Paul Danier Jr., who's been on this show. Hear that podcast, Growlin'. Those two guys are just, not only are they in tune and they're super sharp, but they're just fun and like they keep it loose. Their writing is phenomenal. And Joe Burrow returned to practice yesterday. And I wanted to talk to Jay about Joe Burrow, about the Bengals, about the offensive line. Is there a backup running back behind Joe Mixon we need to have on our radar? I think we know Jamar Chase is a stud. Burrow's a stud. What is Irv Smith going to bring to the table? Tyler Boyd's one of the better number 3 wide receivers on a team in the entire NFL. And T. Higgins is underrated. Like he's that 1B in that tier, right? Like you have T. Higgins, a 1B to Jamar Chase. You have Devontae Smith, a 1B to A.J. Brown. You have Jalen Waddle, a 1B to Tyreek Hill. So those 3 guys are in a tier in their own. I actually have Chris Olave in there as well, who I do believe is a 1 on his squad. Still have Michael Thomas on the team, but he has missed 50 games. Actually, he's missed 10 of the Saints' last 50 games over the past 3 years. Can he stay healthy? Saints Nation is certainly hoping. Houday. We'll do a bunch of Houdays here on the show. But yeah, really looking forward to the conversation with Jay. And looking forward to the conversation with Aaron. So 2 guys joining us tomorrow as well. So check for that. Let's get into, there's a few things here I want to talk about on the show. I have a fun little future special from DraftKings on the Broncos and the Jets. Of course, over the past 10 days, we've heard a lot from both coaches. The former coach in Nathaniel Hackett, who's now the offensive coordinator in New York, back with his old buddy Aaron Rodgers, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, right? Back together. Sean Payton, now a member of the Denver Broncos, the head coach who, kind of went off about how brutal things were in Denver last year, offensively, defensively. Nathaniel Hackett doing a poor job. Hackett, coach speak, coach code, all that nonsense. He, just be better, right? I mean, you weren't a good head coach. You deserved that. So DraftKings came up with a special because these 2 teams are going to meet in week 5. And I mean, I would love for the NFL to flex that. I think the Raiders and I forget who's playing Sunday Night Football. It's the Raiders and somebody else. It's the Raiders and Packers, I do believe. It's like, give us Broncos and Jets. That's what we're here for. Rodgers and Russell Wilson and Peyton versus Hackett. I'm here for all that stuff. So it should be exciting, but DraftKings has a special, which team will have the better record. There's also a tie there. So we're going to dive into that in a little bit. We'll show the schedule of the first 4 weeks before week 5 when they do meet. So we'll dive into that. Also got the teams from the Flex Draft. And I want to show you guys a couple pace tools. Like now we're getting so close to the NFL season. It's August 10th. It's here, right? Preseason action happening now in the NFL. I wanted to just show off a couple tools. Like we have so much to offer over at ftnfantasy.com, ftndaily.com, ftnbets.com, like projections, tools. Of course, if you have the betting package, you get all the picks from everybody across all sports. You also get, the Discord channel broken up into all the sports. You get the tools, you get the projections. Of course, our fantasy football packages, it's phenomenal. I'm just saying that because I'm part of it. I mean, it's headed by the GOAT, Jeff Ratcliffe, right? I mean, he's one of the best rankers. He was number one a couple of years ago over at Fantasy Pros. His projections are always on point. We have all of our rankings, myself, Mike Randall, Pope, Pfeiffer, Vlad Sedler, High Stakes, Nelson Souza. It's here now. It's draft season. We're doing live drafts, high stake, best ball. We did a couple redrafts from Sleeper, Superflex. We tried different strategies. We have all kinds of content available on our YouTube page for free. But the package, you're going to have rankings, articles. I mean, we have tons of articles flying left, right, and center here and there. So there's a lot of goodness, and there's a lot of tools that are really cool to look at in season. I like to look at them now, but of course things change. But we have all kinds of advanced pass statistics, from a quarterback standpoint, which direction of the field do they normally throw to, A dot, air yards. Some of the tools are free, but I wanted to show you guys today the pace tool. It's the pace run/pass tool, and a lot of goodness in that tool as well. Like how many plays does a team run in a season? You can adjust from neutral game script within 8 points. When a team is up, of course, they're going to lean on the run a little bit. When they're playing from behind, they're going to be passing a little bit more. But I like to look at it from a neutral game script within a score, 8 points within a score. And I think that gives us a true feeling of how these teams like to run their offense. Of course, things are going to change a touch here this year. Like Baltimore, we'll get into them. They have a new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, in town. They're not going to be as run heavy. I don't think they're going to be as run heavy. They ran 11 personnel fewer than any team in the NFL last year. And this year, they went and got Odell Beckham Jr. They drafted Zay Flowers, right? They have Rashad Bateman, who they still believe in, return to practice this week. So there's a lot of different faces on the squad. It's the best wide receiver room Lamar Jackson has ever had. So we can take some of them with a grain of salt, but we'll also identify some of the teams that may not be on this list this season. But the pace tool is awesome, especially from a DFS standpoint. For those that like to play a little bit of DFS, you like to see the overall look of a team and how they like. Philly overall is inside the top 5 and run first, but in a neutral game script, they're not. They're around 8th or ninth. And of course, a lot of times last year, they blew teams away and they ran the ball in the second half. That's just the way it was. Like they didn't really have a true test until they lost, week 8 or week 10, whatever it was, against Washington. Things will be different for them this year. It's a tougher schedule, but I like to look at this because it's cool. Like you can take certain things from it. From a redraft standpoint, we'll show the run heavy teams and the pass heavy teams, and we'll identify some players on those squads that are good fantasy targets. But it's great in season to take a look at that and see which teams are playing at a slow pace, which teams are playing at a fast pace as well. So that statistic, I think, we'll bring to you guys tomorrow. And today we'll just take a look at the overall just run heavy and pass heavy squads. So before we get into all of that, we also have some MLB picks and some props for you as well towards the end of the show. There's only a handful of games around the dime, and there's a couple that are getting underway currently right now. And if you're watching live on our FTN Network YouTube page, but want to take care of the Game Plus Network crew, so we have a couple later on. Let's get after the draft. So this was one of 2 drafts that happened live over at the Perfect Pint in New York. And I didn't want to show like the whole draft here because it's like a lot to bring. It's a lot to take in, right? It's like 16 rounds here. Of course, Jake's not rolling with any kickers. He has a defense and he's got a couple flex spots there for you. I'm going to put the draft right now in the chat if you guys wanted to take a look at the overall draft. We brought this up a couple times on the show yesterday, All in Football and Set Bet Spike as well. So going to roll through this draft, going to leave this up for a couple minutes and roll through this. And then I'll share my reason behind some of my picks and things like that. But the draft for the iTunes listeners and Spotify listeners, it started Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson as the second running back off the board. Pick 4 there to Andrew Erickson of Fantasy Pros. Coach Esther takes Austin Eckler. Jamie Eisenberg, I thought, had a fantastic draft. This dude was sniping me. And I mean, it was tough to be between Jake Ciely and Eric Young. And Eric even said, like, while you're drafting, he's like, dude, when you get going about a player that you like on Set Bet Spike, you just, I have to move him up my draft board. I'm like, okay, well, thanks. Thanks for that. Because you're sniping all my guys for me. But it's still a blast. Tyreek Hill to Jamie there at pick 6. Saquon to Jake on brand. Myself, Nick Chubb on brand. Cooper Kupp falls to pick 9 here, which I guess is the first. There's 2 things, right? Bijan going 4th, RB2, and then there's Cooper Kupp falling to 9, but still staying in that tier, which I do believe we touched on a couple weeks ago. It's still the tier for me, as you see these are my rankings. My first three tiers: Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill. Cooper Kupp could miss the first couple weeks. He could be ready to go. He could be back on the field practicing in full here in a couple weeks. We're just not really sure, but he's not out of that tier for me. I bumped Tyreek Hill up ahead of him. I know a lot of people, in this tier video, we did it a couple weeks ago. We posted on TikTok and IG, and most of the comments were, Tyreek Hill doesn't deserve to be in that tier. What I've said before is I think he's quarterback proof. I mean, I think he showed us that. He left Patrick Mahomes and had 1,700 receiving yards. He didn't miss a beat, guys. This guy was taken in the second round as wide receiver 9 or 10. Everybody was a little bit uncertain of him. I believe it or not, I started a draft with Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill, and they rode those guys all the way to the finals in one of my leagues. Tyreek Hill showed us he is quarterback proof. Tua went down last year. He caught passes from Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson. Those aren't great quarterbacks. And shout out to Teddy, who just signed a contract with Detroit. But I think Mike White is a better backup than those two guys. Tua, we hope that he stays healthy. There's a couple things like he's taken on jiu-jitsu for like reaction time. He's got a concussion helmet. There's other things that, Miami has worked with him in the offseason. So prepare, I guess. I hope, I wish him the best. If he gets another concussion, that could be the end of Tua in the NFL. I hope that's not the case. I'm rooting for the guy, but I'm not concerned really when it comes to Tyreek Hill. And then you see the other tiers there. And I have recently moved Garrett Wilson up ahead of Devontae Adams. And you see in the draft, I was able to take him there in the second round. And I talked about that tier 3 as those 1Bs and Chris Olave getting mixed in there. So back to the board, Travis Kelce at pick 10. I have no issues with Kupp. If Kupp falls there, for me, I've said it a lot. I'm alpha wide receiver, but I'm also, I'd like to do a hero RB, and there's some uncertainty, at the running back position. Josh Jacobs is away from the team. Jonathan Taylor's away from the team. Are the Patriots going to bring in Zeke? Are the Jets going to bring in Dalvin Cook? What does that do to Stevenson? What does that do to Hall? Jahmyr Gibbs touched early there in the end of the second, but Pollard, Henry to round out round 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Stephon Diggs, Josh Jacobs, and then the wide receiver run here. I wanted AJ, but, EY knew I wanted AJ, and he wanted Chubb, so he returned the favor there on the snipe job. Wilson to myself, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb. I'm comfortable with all 4 of those guys. Diggs in there as well. Amon-Ra, this is a half-point setting. Amon-Ra, I think, a little bit more of a boost from a PPR standpoint, but I don't think he has the same type of ceiling, especially from a touchdown standpoint, as Diggs, Brown, Wilson, and Adams and CeeDee Lamb. Some of these guys are used differently. I think that they could have fewer targets and fewer catches, but I think more yards, higher ADOT, more touchdown upside for the others. But Garrett Wilson to myself, I'm definitely drinking the Kool-Aid. I think he's in for a big-time season here with Aaron Rodgers. He had a great season last year, over 1,000 yards with piss poor play at the quarterback position. Now he does have Aaron Rodgers there. Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, then Jonathan Taylor. So Jonathan Taylor, I have moved to RB9. I do have some concerns at the moment. He's, back and forth with Jim Irsay. He's away from the squad. He's nursing a couple injuries. Does he play? Does he hold out? Does he want a new contract? All those things. I think he plays. I think there's probably I think he plays compared to him and Jacobs. Jacobs is not hurt, but he's away from the team, right? He wants that contract. So those guys are kind of off my list at the moment. If Taylor fell to the 3rd round, I saw, if you caught the show yesterday, he actually went in the 4th round of the best ball draft we did over at underdogfantasy.com. And I think that's a steal. I think you definitely want to roll the dice at that point. And, we may look back here at this draft and say, Coach Esser has Eckler and Taylor. He's got the best 1-2 punch out of the backfield, and he got good value there on JT. So he even said it when he took took Taylor. He's like, I'm going to take Taylor. He's fallen quite far enough. I'd love to hear from you guys. How far does he have to fall to take him? For me personally, as I mentioned, he's just off. I'm just crossing him off the list. If he's there in the early 3rd, if I'm picking here in the between 1 and 4 in the 1st round, and I see him in the 3rd round, I may take him there, especially if I started wide receiver. When you do something like that and Taylor's your RB1, you could fall into a pretty big hole. So it's a risky pick at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty around him. Waddle there to Andrew Erickson, Ramondre Stevenson, and you see Full Moon went running back. Travis Etienne is his 3rd back there. So heavy running backs. Don't love the wide receiver group, and that's what happens when you go RB. Jamar Chase, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devontae Smith here to Joey Wright, Chris Olave to round out. That's a good 1-2 punch with JJ and Chris Olave. And then went Breece Hall to start the 3rd round. For Gibbs, I don't know. Like, I think he's going to be good. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I have said it in a couple different shows and I always feel like a broken record here. But for those that are stumbling across the show for the first time or listening here, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is a great back. I mean, yes, Detroit spent that draft capital on him. He's a bell cow back. He can catch, he can run. He's showing off in the camp. And in Detroit's camp, I'm not surprised. I mean, these guys should show off, right? A lot of them are not even in pads. It's a young, fresh running back who's got a lot of burst to his game. I mean, he's got a lot to offer. But this team did sign Dave Montgomery. I think Dave Montgomery is the better value. He is the back I would rather have. We have to bake in ADP. You know, you can get Dave Montgomery, and we'll show it in a bit. Our guy EY got him in the 6th round. Like, do you want Gibbs in the 2nd or you want Montgomery in the 6th? Montgomery could fill the Jamal Williams role as the goal line back. Jamal Williams led all backs in red zone rushing attempts last season, rushing touchdowns. I think he's going to fill a similar role. He's never been a flashy type back. Some of his metrics are not, they don't jump off the page, but he's leaving a team in Chicago that has had a bad offensive line over the past couple of years. Now in Detroit, one of the better offensive lines in football. It's just going to be a committee. That's it. I mean, there's no Jameson Williams to start the season. Marvin Jones is the wide receiver too. Reynolds, like, I like Laporta, but he's a rookie tight end. It's going to be a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown early and often all season long. I mean, he's a legit wide receiver 1 in the NFL and in fantasy football. And I'm sure Gibbs is going to catch a bunch of passes, just like Swift. Maybe they'll trust him a little bit more in the red zone. There were times last year where Swift marched him all the way up the field, and then they took him off the field and they put in Jamal Williams. I think that they will put in Dave Montgomery, but I just don't want a running back in a committee I just don't want to take a running back in the first couple of rounds that's in a committee. But again, that's not any shade at Joey. Met him over the weekend. He's great, man. The guy's super nice. He sent me a DM after, like, he's just a super nice guy and he's super sharp. So maybe he's onto something. It's not for everybody. You can't love everybody. You can't. That's what I see on Twitter all the time here. And I wanted to call somebody. I didn't want to call anybody out, but I wanted, and I may do this still, and it's X now on Twitter. Everybody loves everybody. There's nothing negative, and that's great. Why should we be negative? We should all be positive in life, right? We should say positive things. Sometimes on this show, I think to myself, like, who am I sitting in my basement and I'm not trashing Jahmyr Gibbs, but I'm saying he's going too early. I don't want him. Who am I to say that? Like, and this is not anything to that athlete, but this is the name of the game. It's like, it's highs and lows. It's like a stock market. You know, we're trying to give advice and the best possible advice here. So we may look back and that pick may be awesome, and you know, I'll eat it, and I'm fine with that. It's all good. But everybody loves everybody. You jump on social media and it's highlight reel after highlight reel. Guys are in pads and shorts. Like, are you kidding me? Like my buddy you said the other day, Chris Olave. Chris Olave is you know, he's blown by defenses in camp. Great. He should be. You know what I mean? Like, Bijan Robinson should be blowing by those weak defenders in Atlanta. Like, they've just drafted skilled players in the first round over the past couple of years. Their defense is trash. It's not good. He should be. Drake London should be getting the better of the corners in the secondary in Atlanta. These things should be happening, but everybody loves everybody. There's nothing negative to say about anybody. Nobody wants to talk about a player they want to fade, or it is what it is. Into the 3rd round, Breece Hall, Devontae Smith, Travis Etienne, Mark Andrews, second tight end off the board, T. Higgins, Najee Harris, DK Metcalf. Like, for me, I would rather have Etienne, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon ahead of Gibbs. That's, you know, Pittsburgh's a run-first team. Yeah, Jalen Warren is trailing up, but Najee's still the guy there. Tank Bigsby is doing great things in camp. I love Tank Bigsby too. I mean, so does Pope, right? Remember Pope came on the show here, and DeAndre Hopkins signed with Tennessee, and he still had like a 5-minute rant on Tank Bigsby. Bigsby's doing great things. You know, he could be the goal line back, first, second down back at times. You know, he's catching passes. But Travis Etienne is a good back. He's still going to get his, right? And he's a guy like Eckler. Maybe he's not going to catch as many passes, but 15 touches, he's going to do some great things. He's going to, you know, accumulate 100 yards often, I think, with no stack boxes and an elite offense in Jacksonville. And I said before, I think they can go toe-to-toe with anybody. DK Metcalf there to Jake. I went Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Joe Mixon, and then we see that first tier of quarterbacks here. Josh Allen to Alford, and then we had Dameon Pierce there, followed by Patrick Mahomes, Deebo Samuel, and then Jalen Hurts. So again, we're splitting hairs with these 3 guys. Last year it was Jalen Hurts who was first in fantasy points per game. Josh Allen missed a game. They were all right there. Patrick Mahomes. Like, Mahomes is not going to run as much as Hurts. They want to scale back Josh Allen rushing. We've heard that before, but they did go out and get a Damian Harris, who's hurt at the moment. They did get Latavius Murray. James Cook's having a good camp. It's another guy. He should look better than Damian Harris, who has had numerous knee injuries and hamstring injuries, and they probably just want to ease him in to the season. This is James Cook's season. He is rising up draft boards considerably. I still like him as a target. I was trying to get him in this draft. He went 2 spots ahead of me. Again, Jamie Eisenberg just like, he's just steals all my guys, man. He's super sharp, and it makes me feel good, I guess, because there are a few players in my queue that he took, and it does make you feel good when a stud like that drafts them. Anyways, Ken Walker to EY, TJ Hockenson here to myself. I'll dive into my team and my reason behind picks here in a little bit, but I think if I could go back in time, and I really like TJ Hockenson. You know, he's on pace for 102 catches in Minnesota. He had 6 catches per game over the 10 matchups that he played with the Vikings, which would have been just behind Travis Kelce, who had a $110. In fact, he was second to Travis Kelce anyways with 80 some odd catches, but he's now on a team that likes to use him, throw him the football, right? There, you can count on one hand how many times this guy had double-digit targets, really even being the second option in Detroit. In Minnesota, he was locked into the second option. He passed Adam Thielen right away. He got red zone looks. He had a 21% target share in 10 games with Minnesota, and he didn't even know the playbook. He just got thrown into the fire. Now year 2 here with Minnesota with a Kevin O'Connell offense, a pass-happy offense, a team that I think will struggle to run the football and still has some major issues in the secondary. I view TJ Hockenson as like a wide receiver too. He's going to get 100 catches. Is DJ Moore going to get 100 catches? I don't think so. Is Calvin Ridley going to get 100 catches? I don't think so. So that's why I went that way. Usually I'm wide receiver heavy, but I went a different way. This is different to me. I don't normally go tight end early, but I wrote up Hockenson over at ftnfantasy.com, and you know, it was just hammered into my head. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of what he has to offer. I think he's going to finish ahead of Mark Andrews actually. This season there's a lot going on in Baltimore. There's not as much. And I like Addison and I like KJ Osborne, but I think Hockenson will for sure be the 2. But here's another wide receiver run and more. Ridley, McLaurin, Lamar Jackson is the 4th quarterback off the board. That's where I moved him with the recent injury to Joe Burrow, but he's still in the same tier as Fields and Burrow for me. Hopkins, Aaron Jones, Jerry Jeudy. Then Madison to start the 4th, Drake London, Chris Godwin, Christian Watson. Was really hoping for Christian Watson to fall back and be my wide receiver 3 here. In fact, I had Watson, Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins, and K-Makers all in my queue ready to go. And what happened? They all got selected before me, so I went another way and went with Justin Fields. Herbert after Fields there. I know EY is big on Justin Herbert. He's not in that tier for me. He's in a 3rd tier with Trevor Lawrence, but I've nothing against the pick. He's got him paired up there with Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, Hollywood Brown, James Conner. I'm just out on Conner. I'm out on Aaron Jones. I'm out on Alexander Madison. Just out on these guys that don't really excite me too much. Aaron Jones is a good back, but he's not the red zone goal line back, and he's in the committee, and it's not going to be the same. He's not going to have all those. I don't think he's going to have like 5 or 6, 7 catch games like I did with Aaron Rodgers. Those guys got to have blindfolds on and hook up. This is not going to be the same sort of offense in Green Bay this year. I just don't believe it. Connor, volume's going to be there. It's going to be the worst offense in football. He's had some issues staying healthy. It's just an easy fade for me. And again, no shots at anybody else here. The 6th round, Ayuk, Deontay Johnson, Mike Evans, and then the running back run here in Dave Montgomery. Got my guy Javonte Williams. I have a lot of shares of Javonte Williams, and he's, as we said on this show a few times, he's really moved up draft boards. We were getting him in the 9th and 10th round, and high stakes I've seen him go in the 4th round. He's cleared to contact. He's ahead of schedule. He's looking great at camp. He's just a good back. This time last year, people were drafting him in the 1st round. Like, I like Samaje Perine too. These guys can both eat, just like Ingram and Kamara ate with Peyton in New Orleans. Like, yes, I need him to be good. This is what Jake says. You really need Javonte Williams to be good. If he gets hurt, you're screwed. Of course, you can say that about anybody. You can say that to Towers. He's got Jacobs and Mixon. What happens if one of those guys goes down, right? He's really banking on other guys in his squad that he took some nice upside, and Devon Achane and Zamir White, but he's got the Raiders backfield, which is nice. That's probably smart. If you draft Jacobs, maybe you want Zamir White just in case. I don't like the handcuff, but it's probably a good call. Yeah, you can say that about anybody. If you lose somebody, you're in a tough spot, but I'm a believer. I think Javonte is going to be good, and I think he has upside to be a top 10 running back. So I think I got 2 top 10 running backs, although I'm pretty thin after Jerick McKinnon. Kamara here, we know now that it's a 3-game suspension. I think this is where he'll live as a, 3 games. You're only missing a couple games from him. The team, New Orleans, brought in Kareem Hunt, didn't sign Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt went to the Indy, was offered more money apparently. He wanted more money, didn't sign there. He's got other teams interested. I don't know where Kareem Hunt's going to go. I also think that he's washed. But if he went to Indy, it would be a better situation for him than it would be in New Orleans. And I think for the Saints, they were just, okay, we lost Benjamin. We want a healthy body here. Yes, we have Kendra Miller. Yeah, we have Jamal Williams and Kamara. Maybe just a healthy body here. But when all is said is done and everybody's ready to go week 4, week 5, it's going to be the Kamara and Jamal Williams show. It's not going to be Kareem Hunt is not going to really touch the field at all. I think just insurance they were looking for. Joe Burrow, Jamie Eisenberg, man, this guy crushed it, man, with Hill and Lamb and Najee and Ridley and J.K. Dobbins and then James Cook after this. And the value on Gabe Davis, this time we loved him as a wide receiver 2. And what happened? He finished as a low-end wide receiver 2. Now nobody wants him. I don't know why, but he's a good target here in the 8th round as your wide receiver 4. I think Eisenberg just crushed this draft, man. I got to get him on the show to pump his tires. But Joe Burrow here falling to 6-7. I think that's pretty solid, man. I think that's a really good get there. Getting the value here after Herbert. If he was 100% healthy, he would go in this 4th or 5th round. So we got him a little bit later. Kittle, good value. Rashad White, love it. Erickson took a few of my guys as well. As I mentioned, I wanted Watson. I wanted White. I was hoping he'd fall back and he'd be my RB3. That just didn't work out. Kirk, Lawrence, Mike Williams. Then into round 7 with Pitts, Darren Waller, Dak Prescott, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he's going to touch early. I think he's the 3 there in Seattle. I really do believe that he's the 3. And, Lockett went ahead of him in this draft, and he should. But I don't know. I think from a dynasty standpoint, I love him. Rookie only, should be the first wide receiver off the board, but I don't know if he's going to be a consistent wide receiver this year in year 1 with DK and Lockett there. But I think this could be Lockett's last year in Seattle, and we'll be looking at him very differently next year. JSN. Pittman was on my list. I was thinking about him. I actually think Pittman's game may be better with Gardner Minshew than Anthony Richardson, but it remains to be seen. James Cook, as we already touched on him, I like the pick. Love Dotson, wanted Dotson. Jake sniped me. I kind of panicked here with Pickens. I do have Jordan Addison ranked ahead of him, but I didn't want Addison with Hockenson as well. And I wasn't really feeling the running backs. I thought that I could get Pacheco on the way back, and then Eric sniped me there with Pacheco in the 7th. So again, if you have a guy that you like, just go get him. Somebody asked me, why didn't I just wait for Goddard and Hockenson? I don't think Goddard's going to be a guy that catches 100 passes. He's not the 2 in Philadelphia. Hockenson is the 2, and that's the reason I think there's a big gap between those two guys. Swift, Goddard, then Dalvin Cook, Khalil Herbert. Brandon Cooks was on my radar as well. Towers got him, Pacheco right before, and then went Quentin Johnson. Gibson after, Gabe Davis, Treylon Burks, Zay Flowers, Ingram, Sutton, and Watson. We'll round out with that. So this is what the team looks like here. Nick Chubb, Garrett Wilson, Amari Cooper. What can I say about Amari Cooper? I know I have 2 Browns there. I'm not too worried about it. It's not typically something I love to do, but I did like Amari Cooper more so than Keenan Allen, and I'm not totally in on Deebo Samuel, and it was just a little early for me to go more Ridley. Amari Cooper did have his best statistical season with the Cleveland Browns last season. He was used differently. He had more yards per route run. He had a higher ADOT. He had more end zone targets, and he had another 1,000-yard season. And guess what? He caught a lot of passes from Jacoby Brissett last year. Deshaun Watson did not look good. He looked awful. He was very rusty. Maybe he deserved that. He absolutely probably did. But we'll see now here in year 2, learning the playbook with Amari Cooper. And this wasn't with the team at this time last year, building a rapport. And something he's doing now. I think Amari Cooper is always one of the most underrated wide receivers in football. Last year in the flex league, I got him as wide receiver 42, and he finished as wide receiver 10. Hockenson, Fields, what can you say about Fields, right? Comes with the rushing floor. And now, I've said this a couple times, but just look at Allen when they got Diggs and look at Hurts when they got A.J. Brown. Yes, it is that simple to me. Yeah, and people say this, people are really just bashing Fields as a guy that can't throw the ball deep down the field. The same things were said last year about Jalen Hurts. I remember them. Everybody was talking about how they thought Gardner Minshew would be the starting quarterback in Philadelphia at the halfway point. Jalen Hurts would have won the MVP if he didn't get hurt down the stretch of the season. I'm not wrong about that. He had the best performance ever from a quarterback in the Super Bowl, not winning the game. They put up the most points ever for losing effort. He was phenomenal with his legs, with his arm, deep shots. Jalen Hurts improved as a passer when he got an alpha wide receiver. DJ Moore is an alpha wide receiver. Like, let's not get too caught up in the crapshoot in Carolina last year. This guy has caught passes from Cam Newton, who was not great. He had one good season that was an outlier season. He was never an accurate quarterback. And when DJ Moore came in, Cam Newton was at the end. He also caught passes from Kyle Allen. He also caught passes from Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. this may be the best quarterback he's ever had. And there's still room to grow here for Justin Fields. Like, everybody falls, a lot of people fall into this trap every single year. They just look at the numbers from like last year. Oh, well, he was so good in college because he just threw the ball to Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. I could just be under center and throw the football to those two guys. Like, stop it. You can't do that. You need capable weapons around you. You need coaching. Do you remember when Justin Fields started as a rookie? Do you remember his first game against Cleveland where he was sacked 8 or 9 times? Do you remember Matt Nagy and the play calling? They didn't even have this guy in motion. They didn't have any design runs. They had no guys in motion. They had no design runs for Justin Fields. They didn't play to his strengths. And do you remember Garrett Wilson, or it was Myles Garrett? He would just like called out the team. I couldn't believe they had no design runs. I can't believe they had no guys in motion. Like, it was just too easy. My nephew, who's 6, could have called a better game plan for Justin Fields that first year than Matt Nagy did. And now you have year 2 with Eberflus. You've brought in DJ Moore. I'm not a big believer in Darnell Mooney, but he's better as a wide receiver 2 than a wide receiver 1. I'm not a big believer in Chase Claypool, but he's better as a wide receiver 3 than a wide receiver 2. And I do like Cole Kmet, right? You got a Cole Kmet, George. And Cole Kmet, although he started week 1 and week 2 with 0 fantasy points, he had a great finish to last season. Now nobody wants this guy because he brought in DJ Moore. DJ Moore has been among the leaders in receiving yards at the wide receiver position over the last 4 years. He's a he's been high ADOTs, explosiveness to his game. I think he was second in yards after the catch one season. He doesn't have the touchdowns as the other guys. Now, he's not used that much inside the red zone. He may not have a lot of touchdowns this season compared to some of those other wide receivers that we just saw go around him. But I think that DJ Moore is going to be great for his game. I don't know if Justin Fields is going to run for 1,100 rushing yards again, but we got him projected for 700. And if he's getting 40 to 60 rushing yards a game, you're starting with a free touchdown. That's 4 fantasy points. You are starting with a free touchdown. It's like when Kirk Cousins only throws 1 touchdown and has a bad game, he finishes with 9 fantasy points. If Justin Fields has 1 touchdown, he's finished with like 15, 16 fantasy points. The floor is super high. The ceiling is much higher. And I think he's in for a heck of a year. I think he's going to break out as a passer. Last year, 2,000 yards. This year, we have him for over 3,200 passing yards. It's another 1,000 yards you're adding to his game. Justin Fields season, baby. What else do we got here? Here's a little bit of a rant there. Javonte Williams, George Pickens, Quentin Johnson, Jerick McKinnon, 9 receiving touchdowns last year, half-point setting. I really need him to still be involved, and I think he will be. I also need Zeke to land on a squad. He doesn't have a squad. I think wherever he goes, he's going to be the goal line back there. I really believe that. Jayden Reed, I like. I got a lot of young wide receivers. Jake was taking some shots at me here, but Pickens, I think he has a touch of a higher ceiling there than Deontay Johnson. Johnson may get more looks, more targets, but Pickens has got the hands, man. And he was the guy scoring touchdowns. He was Pickett's guy. So I need one of these 3 guys to pan out. 2 of the 3, Quentin Johnson, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Even if they stay healthy, I think that Quentin Johnson will have a larger role than Joshua Palmer did in this offense when everybody was healthy. I think Kalen Moore is good for Quentin Johnson and Justin Herbert and good for this passing game. And we'll show you in a second, this was a pass-happy offense. And I think it will be again this season. So I like Johnson there. Mingo, I kind of panicked. I should have went Nico Collins. Actually, I had Nico Collins ranked higher. He was just kind of buried. And, you have a couple pops and these things happen to you. But Jonathan Mingo, I think he's going to be the number 1 there in Carolina ahead of Adam Thielen. Jayden Reed, I think, is locked into a slot role there in Green Bay. And I think in a couple of years, we're talking about him being a better wide receiver than Christian Watson. And I just love Christian Watson. So those 2 guys are on my radar. I want Watson. If I don't get Watson, I want Reed. If I get Watson, I'll probably avoid Reed, but I want one of those 2 guys. I think they'll both be pretty solid this year. Kenneth Gainwell, I don't actually have a lot of shares of, but let's be honest about Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift. None of these guys have been able to show us that they can stay healthy for a full year. So we're shooting for some upside at the end. Sean Tucker with my last pick. This guy would have been drafted in the NFL. He had some health concerns there. And, Rashad White, I like him quite a bit as well. But, Chase Edmonds hasn't really shown us a whole lot since he's been given an opportunity leaving Arizona. Didn't show us a whole lot in Miami and bounced around a little bit. I know he's listed as the 2 there in Tampa, but I think Tucker could surprise some people here in camp. Rashid Shaheed is already hurt, so that's not great. But he's going to be out for a few weeks. All right, that's the squad. Rip me if you want. Praise me if you want. Love to hear your thoughts. Just bring them. Pace tool. Let's get after that. Let's do pass. Let's do pass first. So, as I mentioned, this is a a pace and run / pass tool over at FTN Fantasy, FTN Daily. You can see this stuff. And included in the pace tool, you will see overall plays, second per snap, no huddle percentage, pass percentage, which you see here, rush percentage, plays per 60, pass per 60, rush per 60. There's all kinds of things you can look at. All the quarters, first quarter, second quarter. You can look at week to week. You can look at home, on the road. You can look in zone. You can look in the red zone. You can look and the team is, yeah, I like to look at this as a neutral. This is neutral because, of course, when teams are up, they're going to lean on the run. When teams are down, they're going to lean on the pass. This is a neutral game strip. So within 8 points, that's really one score. The Bengals, number one pass happy offense, 64.9%. If you look overall, you will see the Bucks up near the top. They were at 67% overall. That's what we know from Tom Brady. He was just chucking like a madman, right? I know I'm retired. I'm going to try to get as many touchdowns as I can. But let's be honest, they just couldn't run the football last year. The Chargers at number 2, right? We just talked about Quentin Johnson and Kellen Moore and Justin Herbert. So all of those weapons. I like Keenan. I like Mike Williams, like Quentin Johnson. We like all the Bengals guys. I'm not too much into Tyler Boyd. I just don't think that there's really a ceiling there unless somebody gets hurt inside that offense. The Vikings, right? TJ Hockenson. And I think they're going to remain pass happy. I think all of these teams besides the Bucks, I think the Bucks will try to slow it down a little bit with Baker Mayfield / Kyle Trask, but these 4 teams are going to be pass happy. We're all trying to figure out who's going to be the number 2 behind Travis Kelce. We tried to figure it out last year, and who that number 2 was last season in Kansas City. It was Jerick McKinnon. There were times where he had more targets and more catches than Travis Kelce. There were times where he was the number 2. Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Justin Ross, Richie James, MVS. Like, there are so many moving pieces there in Kansas City. The guy that actually is going to stay on the field the most after Travis Kelce is MVS, but nobody wants him, right? He's the guy that's on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. He's the guy that stretches the field, but I'm not totally in on him. I like Sky Moore. He's starting to rise up draft boards, like a little bit too early for me, but I still like Sky Moore. I'm out on Tony. I like taking shots on Rashee Rice. If you buy the hype, Justin Ross is climbing up draft boards. And I like Richie James. I think Richie James is going to have some nice weeks as well. So if you're best ball drafting, you're shooting for some upside, get some Kansas City players in your life. You don't have to have Mahomes, but you will have some spike weeks there from certain players, and they could be the difference for you. As I mentioned, I think the Bucks will kind of change tune and slow it down a touch. We'll see if they can run the football. Speaking of slow it down and run the football, these are the top 5 in terms of rush percentage. Again, neutral game script within 8 points. Bears, they're going to stay this way. Yes, of course, Justin Fields, but Eberflus is a guy that wants to run the rock, right? With outside zone runs. And what do? They got rid of David Montgomery, but they signed Deontay Foreman. They drafted Rashawn Johnson, who I do believe could be a league winner in fantasy football towards the end of the season, just like Cam Akers and Javonte Williams were in their rookie season. It may just take some time. Khalil Herbert's on this board, so George jinxed him. But I like Khalil Herbert. I think he's the guy. Foreman's off my radar. I think Khalil Herbert is a decent value, and I think Rashawn Johnson is a nice little, again, a guy that Jamie Eisenberg just stole from me. It's like right out of my hands. I wanted this guy. I thought he could be a league winner. Falcons, they're going to be run first too. We know this. They had all that draft capital on Bijan Robinson. After Tyler Algier had 1,000 yards last year. He had 1,000 yards last year on like 200 carries. And now you got Bijan Robinson. I get it. I understand why he's going early in drafts. It's going to be great. This is a run first team. Arthur Smith loves to run the football. It's a good offensive line. They're going to stay true to this. I think these other teams will as well, besides the Ravens. As I mentioned, Todd Monken's in town. They ran 11 personnel fewer than any team in the NFL last year. They got Odell Beckham Jr. They drafted Zay Flowers. They got Rashad Bateman. They have Mark Andrews. It's going to be a different offense. It's going to be great for J.K. Dobbins because he's going to see a lot of soft coverage, a lot of soft boxes there. It's not going to be stacked boxes all the time. It's going to be a tough offense to defend. Like, how do you help? Andrews is a mismatch. You got to, worry about OBJ. Zay Flowers is a great route runner. He's going to have a lot of one-on-one. He's going to be open quite a bit, and Bateman's going to stretch the field. But I don't think that this team will be as run heavy as in the past. I think the Panthers will lean on Miles Sanders. We love Miles Sanders on this show. The Commanders, that's what they want to do. They want to run the block, run the rock, slow the pace down. That's how they beat the Eagles. They went into Lincoln, did it perfectly. They ran the football, and they get into short yardage situations, manageable situations on third down. That's how they'll play with Sam Howell, and that's how they'll do it. How about this? This is a cool little thing as we get out of here. This is a DraftKings special. I think you can find it in Ontario as well. It's just Denver versus New York, as we said earlier. It is the Denver schedule on the left, the Jets schedule on the right, plus 110 for the Broncos to have more wins than the Jets after week 4 before they hook up in week 5, which I do believe is in Denver. The Jets plus 170, the tie is plus 320. I'm leaning on the Denver side. I understand that they were the worst offense in football, but this is a really good defense. The Jets have a really good defense, but you can't tell me that schedule on the left is not harder, or it's that schedule on the right is much harder. That schedule on the left is a little bit easier, right? You got the Raiders, and the secondary is brutal. You got Washington, who doesn't really blow you away offensively. You got Miami, sure, that's a tough one. In Chicago is an easier one too. You got this Jets, they start in against Buffalo at home, Monday Night Football, then they have to go to Dallas, then a little bit of an easier one there against the Pats, and then KC to round it out. So I don't know where you guys are here. I am totally on the Broncos at plus 110. I think they will start 3-1, and I think the Jets will actually start 1-3. I think they go loss, beat New England, and then Kansas City to wrap it up. All right, George is like, you got to get out of here. You hung out with the whole show. But we do have one pick here to wrap it up. I actually like the Phillies on the run line at minus 110, but I like Aaron Nola here to pick up the win. I like the over 6.5 strikeouts for Aaron Nola as well, but the win, this is from Bet365 at minus 115. He's up against Patrick Corbin, who we know is a gas can, but for Corbin, gives up a lot of contact, one of the highest contact rates in all of baseball. Phillies are playing really good baseball over the past few weeks of the season. This Washington lineup doesn't scare me. They don't strike out a ton, but they're near the bottom in a lot of just offensive categories over the last couple of weeks. As for Nola, this is his numbers at home, a 3.75 ERA at home, over 5 on the road. Opponents are slashing 253, 297, and 476 with a 323 WOBA on the road against Nola. At home, opponents are slashing 210, 259, 381 with a 276 WOBA. So that's night and day between the two numbers. I think Nola will get enough run support. I think he's going to get to 6-7 innings here today. So we like the Phillies to win on the run line, and we like Aaron Nola to pick up the W as well. All right, we're out of here. We appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out. George is going to send us off. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with two great guests, Aaron Schatz and Jay Morrison, covering the Bengals. Look for that tomorrow here on Mean Streets. Have a good one. Cheers.